This week, I am thinking about two people whose fate may shape the destiny of nations. One is Ron Vili, and the other is Alex Preety. This past Saturday, Alex Preety, an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital, was killed by ICE officers while protesting their immigration enforcement operations. And on Tuesday, Ron Vili's body was returned to Israel after being held captive for 843 days. And I am wondering, will their deaths lead our nations to change course? And will these coming days and weeks serve as opportunities for our countries to look within? Let us first look at the events in Minneapolis. For the past several months, the administration has increased its immigration enforcement, sending heavily armed ICE agents to Los Angeles, Chicago, and now Minneapolis. In our own New York area, these operations have also increased. From the CVS, only a few miles from my home, and where day laborers congregate, 25 people have been deported. One woman was arrested from there and deported, leaving her 3 young children to fend for themselves. The youngest is 2 years old. 2 young boys, ages 19 and 20, were arrested at their scheduled immigration check-in and then deported to El Salvador in shackles. They grew up here and have lived in this country since they were 10 and 11 years old. They are alone now in a country that is completely unfamiliar to them. They have no criminal records and were in fact obeying the law. That is why they went to their check-in hearing. One of the boys missed his high school graduation this past spring. Such stories are far too numerous to recount. We are a nation of immigrants. My family immigrated here. All of our families immigrated here at one time or another. I doubt very much that every one of my grandparents and great-grandparents who left Tsarist Russia escaping from anti-Semitic pogroms had all of their paperwork in order, or even if all of them had any paperwork. We like to think otherwise. We like to believe we followed the immigration laws to the letter, and people today are not. But that was probably not always the case. My family was running away from terrible evils, just like these young boys and their families were fleeing from gang violence. Although one might believe that a nation of immigrants should be open to everyone and anyone, and its gates be wide enough to allow millions and millions of people entry, this is an impossible dream. It is unrealistic. There must be limits and laws to police a nation's gates. There must be an immigration bureaucracy. And bureaucracies, by their very nature, are impersonal and make mistakes. And they can sometimes be even inhumane. But we can do much better than we currently are doing. We are a nation of laws, and these laws are rendered meaningless unless they protect the weakest and even the stateless. And whether we agree with the protesters or not, these democratic laws must also protect the whistleblowing, iPhone filming protesters who interfere with ICE operations and who even spit and curse at officers or attempt to drive away from them. But protesters must not be killed. They must not be shot in the back, and they certainly should not be blamed for their own deaths. Immigration enforcement should not look like a military operation. It's never going to be perfect, but it certainly should not look like this. This country is made great by its promise. It is supposed to welcome your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And those words penned by Emma Lazarus and etched on the Statue of Liberty represent what is best about this country. We always sought to open our doors to those fleeing and seeking to better their lives. I am very grateful and eternally grateful for the welcome this nation offered my ancestors. We are commanded to love God and love the neighbor, the Torah says. And again and again and again, the Torah repeats, love the stranger. The book of Exodus commands, you shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the feelings of the stranger, having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt. We know what it feels like. Our history and our tradition demand that we do better by constantly reminding us that we understand what oppression looks like. We know what being called unwelcome feels like. Immigration enforcement should not look like we are defending our borders against hostile enemies. We should very much start worrying when our leaders speak as if those enemies are within, and when the borders that define our nation move from the periphery to the interior. This is why ordinary people in Minneapolis are rising up against these ICE operations. They refuse to see their neighbors as their enemies. Yes, nations are defined by borders. They form the outlines of a state. But it is a dangerous thing and a very deadly thing when they are drawn within. Defending these external borders and policing them is what nations and their soldiers are expected to do. And on October 7th, 2023, that is exactly what Ran Givli did. He was a member of an elite Israeli police unit and was home awaiting surgery for a broken shoulder. And when he heard what was happening on the morning of October 7th, he put on his uniform and drove to Kibbutz Alumim, a 50-minute drive from his home. He battled with Hamas terrorists for hours until he was killed. His body was then captured and taken to Gaza, where it remained until Tuesday, when it was brought back to Israel by the IDF. That operation to retrieve his body involved 700 soldiers, many of whom volunteered for this mission, including some who were on their 5th deployment, and others who were injured in battle, but nonetheless asked to participate in this mission. Master Sergeant Gvili was the last of the 251 hostages to return home. The clock counting the days, hours, and minutes from that harrowing moment on October 7th, displayed in Tel Aviv's hostage square, stopped counting at 843 days, 12 hours, and 6 minutes. I, along with many of my colleagues and friends, took off our yellow ribbons and pins. Rachel and John Poland Goldberg and millions of others took off the masking tape marking the days. Our people let out a collective breath of relief. And then we began wondering, can we begin to find closure? Gvili's funeral was attended by thousands. Through sobs and tears, his sister Shira spoke and said, "The forest is not the same forest. Nice clothes don't feel the same, and schnitzel will never taste the same. All the laughter is gone, and I'm only left with memories. And every motorcycle Ran loved and collected motorcycles I see takes me back. And sometimes I smile when I see one, and sometimes it feels like an arrow to my heart." His mother Talik added a note of defiance, and she said, "You, our enemies, tried to scare us. Look what's left of you, and you'll see what will be left of you." 50 of the 251 hostages were murdered in captivity. Could their deaths have been prevented? A number of ceasefire deals were scuttled during the course of these past 843 days, until the current deal was signed almost 2 months ago. This week, the IDF affirmed that approximately 70,000 Gazans were killed. How many were Hamas combatants is still being debated. Gaza's devastation is unimaginable. 1,200 Israeli civilians and 900 soldiers were killed on October 7th and the war that followed. Will we ever be able to heal from October 7th's traumas? The vast majority of Israelis are desperate for there to be an independent inquiry about what went tragically wrong on October 7th and in the months and years preceding that day. They long to learn from the mistakes and the missteps that were made. They long to hold their leaders responsible for these failures. There is no way that Israelis find any closure from October 7th's ongoing pain without a Yom Kippur war-like independent inquiry. At Ron Gvili's funeral, President Isaac Herzog said, "The nation must now rise to the next chapter of our existence as a people. Rise strong, confident in our way, rise hand in hand, believing in the state of Israel, Jewish and democratic, and guarding with it with utmost devotion as Ron guarded it." Indeed, nations are defined by borders, and these borders are sometimes defended at great cost. And I long for the day when there will be peace rather than violence at these nations' edges. I remind myself, nations are also defined by values. When borders are invaded, our values can also come under attack, and the resulting violence tends to drown out our cherished values. And when borders are moved from the periphery to the interior, violence inevitably ensues, and our social cohesion is torn apart. But does not have to be this way. Ron Gvili and Alex Priddy were both fighting for their neighbors. They were battling for the nations they love. They were fighting for noble ideals. And I am hoping and praying that their deaths will spark a better destiny for our nations. I pray, let it not be that they died in vain. May the memories of Ron Gvili and Alex Priddy call us to better lives. May their memories make our nation stronger, less divided, and more humane. And let us say, Amen.